The words for the reading today come from the book of Philippians from the Christian Bible. I'm reading the New Revised Standard Version today. Chapter 4, verse 8. It reads, "Finally, beloved, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things." So before we hop off into that, I have a few acknowledgments that I got to make when I'm able to be up here. First, as always, to my family, my wonderful wife, and my awesome daughter, who we were watching at home. And of course, also my dog, Bendy. Also, my extended family, the ancestors that have gone on before me, they all played a part in bringing me here to this time and place with all of you. Also, I have to have another acknowledgement that has to be made here for me now. And that would be for Marguerite, who has taught me a great deal, as good DLREs do, about pluralism and UUism and all sorts of things. So she also helped inform me with all my thoughts of getting here today. So thinking of her, miss her. And lastly, my last acknowledgement is shout out to my guy Scott in the back. Thank you, Scott, for allowing me to come up here. So now let's hop off into it. Thinking and wrestling with this topic of pluralism for me, it took a lot of twists and turns to get here today. It's something that I wrestled with a lot. What I thought I was going to say changed, as sometimes things do. When I was like, would you speak and preach? But it's been a ride. Tackling this really kind of put me on a thing of reevaluating where am I at in my own spiritual, religious life. The question that we sometimes all ask ourselves when we are up in the middle of the night of how did I get here exactly? Now, on the one hand, in many churches, pluralism isn't talked about at all, and that's probably part of why it was a struggle for me too. I was not a lot of practice in many places. Some of us know, not all of us do, but I'm even talking about pluralism is kind of a not so great thing. It's a dirty word. Depending on where you're from, where I am in the deep rural South, you may get asked to leave if you want to bring up something like that. So, even though I've preached for many years now, I never thought I would talk about it. So thanks for allowing me this chance. I'm glad that I'm in a place where I can talk about such things, because they maybe now more than ever need to be talked about. So like I said, I digged into pluralism. How did it show up in my life? And I think I've centered around, when did the first little sprinkles of pluralism pop up into my life? Now, I was, raised, or at least my parents and my professors thought I was raised to be a very good, upstanding Christian. I was Christian boy. But even then, I was always the one that kind of asked the questions that they didn't really want to answer, and sometimes ruffled some feathers. Some of y'all know what that feels like as well. I can feel we've shared some similar stories. That I was no different. And so I had to really sit here and think about how did it come up. And for me, it came up in high school. I came across a book called Tao Te Ching, which that was a book that really kind of expanded on a lot of things in Taoism. So I was reading this book here and there in between my classes in high school, and all the while I was definitely not telling any of my people in my youth group or my youth pastor that I was not only reading it, but I was agreeing with it and resonating with things that other faiths were saying. That was the beginning that kind of stuck with me, and as I grew, it expanded. I got to college, and I still had questions, and I went to study religion in college, so I was free to, I guess, struggle with those questions. And in doing that, I ran across something that would help confirm the need for pluralism, at least for me in my own mind and how it existed. I came across a saying from a rabbi in a book about the Kabbalah, and in it, the rabbi uses imagery, and for me personally, I'm very big on visual imagery helping me understand things. And the rabbi says that for him, he was talking about scripture, but he said that looking at scripture was like looking at a jewel, a diamond. You hold it to the light and you turn it, and each time you turn it, each angle you're at, the light is still light, but it takes a different path. It shows up differently for different people. And so when I use that same logic and I applied it to other faiths, this pluralistic sort of thought, this invitation, things clicked into place. It felt like I was able to hit a different level of like understanding and appreciation for faith and spirituality at that time. And it was very liberating. The verse that I used at the reading, that was the loophole, I guess you would say, in the scriptures that I found. Looking back, again, the emphasis on whatever is good, whatever is right, whatever is just, that really hit. And I simply thought, and didn't ask for permission from anyone, I just simply thought, why couldn't I do that with other faiths? Why couldn't I take more in, figure out what is good and what isn't, and let it work for me? And so I think that's kind of what I've been doing. In some ways, that's how pluralism has been working personally in my life. And with it, I've got to do a lot of amazing things, and I've met a lot of amazing people, like you all. I was like, I could have never been here to do this if I hadn't first wrestled with that scripture, wrestled with that passage. Pluralism can be a hard thing to comprehend for a lot of people, and sometimes it's not something that anyone would accept on day one. It takes time, like any good thing. So that was me kind of explaining my whole thing with pluralism, but now I have to kind of go forward and talk about how I see it working with Unitarian Universalism in the world. And mainly for me, because I feel like we're at a juncture where everything is many things are on the table, and many other perspectives are going to be needed to combat some of the things that we're dealing with in our life and time. And I think pluralism is part of that key. So with pluralism and the 7 principles, they really flow together when we look at it through the 3rd principle and the 4th principle. Look, the 3rd, looking at the acceptance and encouragement of spiritual growth, that plays together nicely. That's how we can all exist in this loving community, even though we all know that we are definitely not all the same. But that's part of the beauty. And our fourth principle lines up with pluralism because it talks about a free and responsible search for truth. And when we get to that, our conclusion is made. We see the conclusion is there's a lot of different paths to get to many truths. And for me, as long as the truth you have can line up with loving people and doing justice and believing in mercy, I think we can get a lot of stuff done together. And the other things maybe we can just argue about on a commercial break during a football game. That's just how I feel. Pluralism is here in our lives to not create division as Christian nationalism or Christian supremacy would have you believe. It's actually here to further our connections to each other, to build more bridges, to tear down this idea that, we are too individualistic beyond repair. That's never been true. That's never been true. In reality, we can all live and be and connect with each other, and accept that we just aren't always taking the same path to get there. It is more of a choose your own adventure than a linear interstate journey. Although sometimes I wish it was maybe more of an interstate journey. The state of where we live is, we'll just say it's tenuous at best, to be nice. But we, especially I believe we as in Unitarian Universalism, have one of the best sort of answers to combat this attempted Christian superiority that we're dealing with in the political and the faith-based landscape. And sometimes I would like to be here and talk about happier things, but it's not a happier time. Sometimes we have to say things for what we need in the moment. We're going to need to lean more into the pluralism and seeing and connecting all the ways of harmony, all the ways of love and justice, and how they line up to combat one particular situation that only thinks that one card can rule them all. Pluralism is about stacking the deck and giving yourselves more options because you understand that there's more than one way and there's always more than one card to be played. Christianity thinks, some people that use Christianity think it's a trump card, literally. And we are here to show them differently, whether it's in the street or in the ballot box or simply when you just go across the street and check on your neighbor, no matter what faith they may have or if they have faith at all. That's cool too. This is the time that we live in. This is the time that we're called to. Let's take the weapons that we have available and use them for the greater good, for our future and our children's future. Pluralism is one part of that process, not the end-all be-all, but I think it's a pretty important one. When we lean into it, we can see that our imagination and our world will continue to grow. And because I think we're at a time where we're going to maybe need to think of creating some new things to deal with the problems that we have in front of us. One of my favorite movies is Inception. I'm not going to go into the whole, do I still think the top is spinning thing? Ask me that after church. But But one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when Tom Hardy comes up to this other person who they're fighting some people, and one person has a particular weapon, a smaller weapon, and that they're using. And in this dream world, you're only limited by your imagination. And his friend comes up to him. He has created something. He's imagined something else, bigger, something bolder to use to help them. And he tells his friend, perhaps you just need to open up your imagination a little bit more and see what you can do. And I think that's where we're at now. Perhaps it's time for all of us to imagine a little bit more. It's perhaps time for all of us to dig a little bit deeper and continue to grow and evolve our faith, however that looks, for the things that we need to do. I think for sure now that, and pluralism helped show me this, is that you can't exist in life, in actuality or spiritually, and be stagnant. Faith and spiritual life is about, dare I say it, evolution. You always are moving, you always are changing, because we always have new things to do and new people to reach. I'm looking forward to reaching new people here with all of you. Thanks.